This is Reset Stories podcast Backstage, the full conversations with people who changed their lives. All right, so we start with this super big question. It's just a start to know your journey so far, who you are and what you do now.
Okay, well, who am I? A lot of many different things. I think, like most women, carrying several hats. I would say entrepreneur, mom, wife, daughter, but predominantly my kind of passion and what I focus on is teaching women how not to be scared of money and how to learn investing in order to build wealth for themselves and the future. Because I have this big idea that actually the way to close any financial gaps between men and women is first and foremost about closing the investment gap, simply because when women invest less, they end up with much less in the future. And I also do believe that when women have more money and are not scared to have more money, they can do some incredible things. And I believe that can lead to solving a lot of problems in this world. So that's what my focus is, to help them understand that money is not something to be scared of. It's actually a tool that you can use for the better. In general, I think for things to work at the peak, you need both, right? It's not to say that it should only be women and not men, but when both kind of bring something to the table, then the outcome is that much bigger and that much more impactful. And of course, the more women work, the more women earn, the more positive impact there is. And I recently dug into it, but don't have the numbers on me, what difference it would make if you increase women-run businesses. And I look specifically for Italy. If you increase women-run businesses by just, a little percentage, the impact on GDP that it has is absolutely mind-blowing. And I think it's also because, when women start having more money, at least personally, what do? I support other women. I go to the female-run businesses. I will go to the little shop on my street and buy my clothes there. I will invest in a female business. There's that kind of ripple effect that happens, and that's why I think communities function better and become richer in all respects.
Do you think that what's holding us back is this thousands and thousands of year long habit of having women at home and men providing?
I think it's a number of different things. There's definitely the kind of the ancestral part of it, right? Because when you've been to some extent suppressed around a certain subject for so many centuries, it's normal that even us in 2026 carry some of that inside, which blocks us from making certain decisions, taking steps. It's definitely cultural as well, right? Because women have been told for so long that they're not good with money, that women have been taught to be good at budgeting, to save, to kind of not take risks and keep everything going, whereas the men have been receiving a completely different story. Grow, invest, take the risk, don't be scared, just go for it. So it's the starting point is already so different, right? When you have something very different kind of there in your head.
In this podcast, we also talk about blocks, when you're stuck, you want to change and you don't know how to change. But you were talking more specifically about the blocks that women have when they would like probably to be entrepreneurs.
It's also, as I say, all of these things that we have been told and have been telling ourselves, right? Some of the things that I come across so often is, for sure, oh, I'm just not good at this because I haven't studied everything from A to Z and I haven't spent 5,000 years learning about this subject, right? Men don't think about that. Men go like, okay, I know one little thing. Yeah, let me just go for it and do it, right? We always wait to know it all. To know it all never happens, unfortunately, and you learn most by doing And whether you do a business or whether you invest, it's the same thing. The learning comes from action. Rather, you never learn and then act. You have to act to learn, to start with. Second is also, I think the industry and the financial industry hasn't made it very easy either, because, I've seen myself, I worked in private banking, I worked in the family office world. I've seen when clients come in as a couple and the women is brushed aside, like nobody's even looking at her and talking to her. They just talk to the husband and ask him questions and wait for him to respond. And she's just sitting there and no one even thinks about asking her opinion. Oh, don't you worry, let me do it. You know nothing, let me do it. I'll take care of it.
And this happens in Italy now, or where is this experience from?
This experience comes from my time in London. But look, I've recently had a client, an Italian client in Italy, who has been invested for a little while now, for about 5 years, and a sizable amount of money. Okay, 900K is not a small amount of money. And when we met, she wanted to just look through her investments to see if they're doing what they need to do for her. So I said to her, can you send an email to your provider, to your bank, with these questions? Simple questions. Can you send me the report to show me how things are doing? Can you show me what has happened in the last 5 years and what have you done? When I read the response from the banker, because she shared it with me, she sent it to me and she said, am I absolutely insane to overreact? Or is this guy like going nuts and getting angry at me, the client, for asking these questions? And when I read that email, I was shocked. Okay, the language that he used, the way that he defensively responded to her, almost in saying, woman, what do you want from me? Like, I've shared stuff with you. What's your problem? That sort of tone. I was like, okay, we gotta move. We got to do something different here. This ain't working. Well, first of all, this is your money. You have the right to ask. Second of all, you are a sizable client. So that's just not the way to treat your clients. But that's what happens, unfortunately, kind of across the borders, irrespective of what country you're in.
Wow. I want to go back to that, but I would like to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah.
And why you decided to have this career.
So I'm from Lithuania originally. Grew up there up until I was 18, 19. And then I moved to London to study at a university. So that was, a big move, from a small country to a big city. And I studied economics and business, as you do back in the day. You had to have a serious degree. And to be honest, I ended up in this work completely accidentally. When I was at uni, in order, to fund my fun nights out, I worked for a catering company doing all kinds of events. And at that time, my goal was to become the manager at that catering company. And in my second year of university, I started talking to them like, look, when I finish my degree, maybe I could have for a manager's position. In the meantime, everyone that I knew were applying for banking internships. So I said, okay, let me do it. I literally did like this to pick a bank and a division that I want to go into. And I ended up at Morgan Stanley in private wealth management. I went there for the summer and I loved it, every single bit of it. And I got offered the job to come back to once I finished my studies. And, the rest is history. I've been in the industry in some shape or form for the last 20 years.
What did you love about this field?
So I don't think other parts of banking would have been for me, but the combination of the American bank mentality and a very entrepreneurial approach to work, because you had to build your own business, you had to build your own book of clients. There was nobody handing you the clients. And back in the day, your pay, you got salary and stuff, but your bonus and everything else depended on how much money you made. You made a ton of money for the bank, you made a ton of money yourself. The more clients you got, the better it was. You had the infrastructure to help you build everything, but there was no handing you the stuff. You had to, call people, go meet them, and try to convince them to become your client. So I really like that entrepreneurial aspect, and the fact that, you kind of get to design, even though within the corporate structure, your own little business and your own little thing. And that's what I think appealed to me the most. And the fact it is like a people-facing business. I mean, I like being around people, talking to people. Like, I need to meet people, I need to meet women, just to have a social life and stuff in general. Yeah, I studied in London. I worked in the bank for 8 years. Then I left and I went to work for a client of mine to set up a family office in London. And family office effectively means that a family has a team of people that manage all of their affairs effectively. But you are wealthy, so we're talking, 100 million plus in assets that you have, to be able to do that. Because, you pay out of your pocket effectively for all these people to work for you, manage your wealth, manage everything else around it. And it's not just one banking relationship. You basically look at everything that they have and structure everything. Working with wealthy people is not necessarily always easy.
Oh my God. Okay, so I got reminded of this. When I lived in New York, I also had a stray job, as I call it, the square job. My only square job I really had, and I was very good at it. I also worked in an office in a catering company, in the office, talking to clients and organizing their parties. And those were incredibly wealthy people in New York. And that was my brush with extreme wealth. I mean, they were spending exorbitant amount of money just to entertain, and they would entertain one another. So you would organize a party for a person, and then the week afterwards they were the same people, and you are on another planet. I remember just having such a disconnect. There were a different universe. How did you manage that? I'm so fascinated by this world, because it seems so far away from everyday life, our normal life, the majority of people.
Yeah, it is, and I don't know, it is and it isn't, right? They're still the same kind of people with the same kind of problems and all that stuff. And the biggest thing was curiosity. How do you get to a place like that? What do you do? How do you start and how do you build from? And I definitely, learned the one thing, that to get to a place like that, you have to take risks. You have to try things. You have to go for it. Because a lot of clients in the banking time as well that I worked with were first time wealthy. So it wasn't generational wealth, which I think, again, it's very different when it is generational wealth that you are born into and you kind of inherit. And then when it's new wealth, because I predominantly worked with people from the Baltic countries, the Scandinavian countries and stuff, it was mostly first time wealth, which is very different, and quite an interesting thing to observe. How do these people do it? How did they get there? With some of the clients, it was also very different ways of doing it. I've had clients who were, young in their 30s, being very smart, setting up a tech company and then selling it for tens of millions. And I've had a client who sold his business that he worked his entire life for in biotech industry at the age of 60 for like 60 million. And it's, again, very different what they do going forward with that. The young guy, he already started another business that has become incredibly successful. So he is just doubling up on everything that he has. Whereas, the older guy, he was just focused on enjoying what he's built, on traveling with his wife, doing things with his children, and like a completely different thing. So for me, I don't know, it was just fascinating to watch, learn, what can I take from it and apply to my life? Also, maybe what I wouldn't want and what I don't like about, that kind of lifestyle and life, and how I would do things differently. But Yeah, it just was very curious because I also, ended up going to a lot of different family office conferences, and the conversations there are just another level. The things that you see people talk about in the media in terms of where they are investing, what they're doing, is a whole different conversation that happens in the room behind closed doors. And the things that they look at, years before they become something. I remember quite a few years ago, before CBD became a thing, I was at this conference and we were having just a general chat, and I realized that there's a bunch of these next gen young guys that in weed farms, effectively, right? Because they foresaw the whole thing that, okay, this is starting to take off, it's going to be big. If I go to the source and I'm the one who, farms it and produces it, I'm going to make a ton of money. And of course they did, as soon as it became, this huge thing where everybody uses it and everybody, is CBD obsessed, and those guys invest at the source. So these sort of things fascinate me, how things happen there.
Basically, your work became your inspiration. The curiosity led you to, I mean, you liked it, so that was great. It's great to have a job that you love. But then it seems to me that you then encountered this world, and that fed your interest even more.
For sure, 100%. I like, look, having the corporate job, also for someone coming from Lithuania, a small town, and suddenly making a ton of money, being able to buy my apartment, traveling all the time, it was like, whoa, I can do this. I'm liking this life. Very, very different from what I was used to. And then, I think the kind of the curiosity to understand more, to go deeper, to sort of be part of that world, became what led me to then eventually, I think, because after the family office, I had the idea that I really want to work with women, mainly because I didn't see many women investing. Even when I worked in banking, there were very few clients who were women. And so I got curious, okay, what is behind that? Because women are making money, women are starting businesses. And so one thing led to another. I founded my business a while ago, but it took me a number of years to really figure out what it is that I want to do and where do I really bring value. Try and have some significant impact. And eventually I arrived at this kind of crossing of education and empowerment. I don't like the word empowerment, but education and this sort of mindset inner work.
There's that saying that your perfect job is a cross between your talent, your skill, your values, and your passion. Did you develop this interest? Where did it start, this interest into women?
I think that comes back from, early days of my childhood. My mom was my strong, independent woman who works, who makes her own money and, doesn't depend on anyone else. And she had this friend who was an entrepreneur. And, when I was, I don't know, 6, 7 years old. So we're talking late 80s, early 90s in Lithuania. She had a chain of pharmacies. And she was, my mom's best friend. And I remember she would come to visit and they would sit in the kitchen having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. And I would be there, by the door, like just listening to what are they talking about. This was fascinating because she was doing something so different. She wasn't married. She didn't have a husband. She didn't have any kids at the time. And she was this, entrepreneur who was traveling, doing things. So I was there, absorbing every word. Every time she would come, I get excited. And I would try and sneak in and listen to their conversations. And I think from there, it kind of came to me this sort of, role model of this woman who does everything for herself, by herself, who making money, earning money. And I guess that was the root of me probably wanting to be that woman to start with, but also then wanting to help others be that woman.
I love the fact that, sometimes changes occur organically, as you grow, but it seems like this was a seed that was in your childhood. Maybe you weren't aware of it, but then maybe unconsciously you took certain. How conscious were you of this woman in your past where you made these changes?
Completely. I forgot about her, right? I mean, only later on it kind of occurred to me. It happens, you don't even realize, and then later on you go like, oh wow, I totally had something there. Like the other example would be, I remember the first time I traveled to London, not even thinking that I would ever end up in London, was when I was about 13 or 14, and we went to Canary Wharf. And I looked around and I was like, oh my God, imagine what it would be like working here. And then, when I was 21, I worked there. Didn't connect the two until much later. I was like, oh my God, I had that thought, I dreamt, and then I forgot about it, and then it happened,
Very much like in the negative, the blocks that you were telling me about are something unconscious. Also, some choices that we make later on are probably based on some unconscious
100%.
meeting, like you with your mom's friend. It seems to me that money is synonymous here with independence.
100%.
It seems to me, right?
Yeah, it's everything, right? It's independence, freedom to some extent, and choice. An ability to have an impact. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're broke, it's really hard to have a big positive impact on the world around you, because you're consumed by the stresses and the worries of, where's the next paycheck coming from? How am I gonna, feed family? How am I gonna do this? If you don't have those things stressing you out, your mind and your energy is free to do something else, to do other things that are, more positive. I mean, even though I guess I grew up with this sort of belief, and I had to work a lot to get over it, around that money is bad. If you have a lot of money, you're a bad person, you've done something.
Oh, wow.
Again, going back to the sort of environment I grew up with, because in the early 90s, with the privatization in the country and all of that, there were a lot of people that, had connections, did this, did that, and became wealthy. And so, my granddad would always say, oh, look at him, he's driving a Range Rover. Oh, like he must have done something to get that. Like wealth and money was always seen as some kind of bad thing. So to get over that took me a little while. And the way I look at it, money is a tool, and it doesn't make you bad or good. It amplifies who you already are. If you're inherently a person that, I don't know, is a bad person, let's say, or someone who in general kind of tramples over other people to get ahead, or hurts people to get their way, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, you will do that anyway. But if inherently your mind is to help, to enhance, to build, to do more, then when you yourself have more, what you can do becomes even bigger, and the impact that you can create is bigger, because money is also power. If you have the money, you have a lot of power.
Well, it's a very obvious on this day and age. I have two questions. One is I've always thought, when I fantasize about, I don't know, winning the lottery or do something, like acquire some sort of money, what would I do with it? So obviously the first thing that I think, because I'm Italian, is to buy properties. So to have my own, right? My own home, a summer home, maybe, then to gift friends things, if somebody needs money, give the time. And then if it's really an obscene amount of money, which for me, an obscene amount of money is in the hundreds of millions, charity. So it's the first thing that comes to my mind. And charity can be also, I don't know, my neighborhood doesn't have a cinema opening one.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be necessarily a shelter or something. Oh, but anyway, definitely where my passions are helping people who don't have the same means that I have. I read somewhere that above 200 million, I would say dollars, euros, whatever, your quality of life, it doesn't improve that much. It's just power.
Yeah.
So if you reach the 200 million, which is insane, I never dreamed that big. But if I do, most of it will be passion project to help out other people, to help, now that I don't have any, I don't know if my mind would change if I have more, but I don't think so. So my question is, do any of your clients act that way? It's just enjoying or amassing more money, or it is, how do these people, I'm so curious, what did they do with it?
Yeah, you kind of nailed it. So I've had an interesting conversation many years ago with a client who was an older guy and had definitely in the hundreds of millions. And that's exactly what he said. He said, like, look, the first million is the hardest, okay? And the first one you do to kind of improve your life. It improves a little bit, Then you have another goal. You go for 10. And then the 10 changes things a lot. But that's exactly what he said. At some point, it is no longer about the money. It is no longer about making more money, but it's about challenging yourself. It's about taking on new things because you enjoy the idea of building things, of creating things, of doing things, of seeing the impact that it has. And it never, like at that level, it never ever is about making more money because you have more than enough. It is about actually challenging yourself to do something new, to do something different. And naturally, the more you have, because you're sorted in that sense of thing, and because you're not driven by making money, the way you approach then building businesses and building things is very different because you're not driven by the inherent need to improve your lifestyle. So you take on more risk. You are more open to whatever possibility is out there, because even if it doesn't work out, it materially doesn't impact your daily life, right? You still have the money. You can still continue living your life. And that's why I think people get very good at doing businesses and at building things, because they no longer have that driver of, I need to make more money. It's, let me see where this goes to. Let's go with it. Let's just, launch into it. So it becomes a very different driver. And that's why he's kind of, the more you have, the more successful you become. Because certain fears are no longer there. Certain things that drive you are no longer there. You're doing it for the sake of doing it.
I remember reading an article in the New Yorker. I do have the articles in the New Yorkers that I love. I put them in a scrapbook. It's like now I have 2 of them. And so I cannot quote specifically, but it was an interesting article on how there's this this rhetoric of wealthy people who were courageous and they went for it and they risked it all and they managed to do something. And in fact, the article was kind of debunking that theory, because most of these people were already wealthy. So this kind of proves what you said. True, if you can get that $1 million, which is a lot anyway, then you then can start, let's say, quote unquote, risk, because at least you have your home. You're not risking living under a bridge. So this is fascinating. So now you left this world and created your own business, right?
Yeah.
And you're helping women with all the information and the knowledge you acquired these years. And you help women
on the investment side. So I help women understand how to use the money that they already have to make more money, in the sense that by investing it to kind of, and it doesn't matter whether they run a business or they work in corporate, it's sort of taking what they've earned and putting it to work in a passive way in some shape or form, and not being scared of the decisions that they make, actually taking action and investing and building wealth for their own kind of future, financially secured future in the future.
Your clients are single women, they're in couples. Does it work?
A lot of different options. There are single women, there are those in a couple. Sometimes I do work with the couple together if they want to do things together. But my suggestion is also, it's great to have things together, but everyone should also be independent to some extent and, have their own things going. Some of them, of course, have kids, and I kind of teach them how to start off already saving and investing for their kids, so that when they turn 18, 20, they already have a little capital accumulated to start off their adulthood. But it tends to be women that already have some amount of money. So I don't necessarily help with figuring out how to save and budget and all of that. So it tends to be women that say have had bonuses, or have maybe it's 100K, maybe it's $1 million, that they have sitting there doing nothing, and they want to take that next step and actually employ that money to do the work for them.
For me, if I had 100K or $1 million, I would not have it sit there, right?
You would be surprised how many women do. I mean, I had a client probably a couple of months ago now, and I run these 90-minute power sessions. So, you pay for 90 minutes. I ask you for all the information, then I prepare, and we sit there for 90 minutes and discuss. She literally was sitting on 90K in cash, and she's like, yeah, I guess I should do something with it.
It's also men, or is mainly women?
It's mainly women.
What do you think that is?
It is all those blocks, all those things. It's like, like I've seen women that run multi-million businesses, and when I talk to them, I go, yeah, I'm not so good with money, I'm not so good with all of this kind of finance stuff. I'm like, what? Here you are being a kick-ass entrepreneur, and then you're telling me you're not so good with money? Like, but it's this thing that we have, right? Or they go like, no, but what if I lose it all? What if it all goes away? So that fear, if you do it in a smart way, it will never all go away. If you do something silly, like take everything you own and put it in Bitcoin, yeah, that might happen. But if you approach it with, a certain kind of rule and some steps, like that's almost impossible for all of it to go away. Or it's kind of this thing, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm learning. I've been reading these articles. I've been listening to this podcast. I've been following this person or following that person, but I don't think I'm there yet. I need to know more about this and this and this. It's like, you need to start and then continue learning, because the cost, I've done a calculation, but I don't remember now the numbers. Again, I can look it up and send it to you. I posted on my Instagram. I did the calculation assuming that, when a child is born, if the parents put, and I did it for UK specific, because there's £9,000 that you can put into a specific kind of investment account that is tax-free for kids. But I calculated what would happen if, when the child is born, the parents put £9,000 every year and invest it for 18 years. And then that kiddo, takes over after 18 years, continues to do the same. They become like a multi-millionaire by the time they're 60. If you miss on those 18 years, they barely have a couple 100,000. Like, it's that huge. The short time that you miss, it makes such a massive difference in terms of how much money you would actually have in the future. So the cost of not doing anything is far bigger than the risk of you losing money by doing.
I see. All right. So I see this disconnect that women have from what they actually can achieve or are achieving, like these entrepreneurs who are amazing with money, but that the disconnect is their awareness is, no, I'm not good with money.
Yeah.
I see the blocks. I see all that. I think it's cultural as well, because when I said to you, if I had money, the first thing I would do,
Yeah.
it would be buying a house. And this is so true in my household. My husband is American. I'm Italian. I see the difference. Like Italians have this tendency that Italians is il mattone, the brick. We invest in
Yeah.
houses. And meanwhile, for my husband, absolutely not. I have a retirement plan. I have investments. What do you think that is?
I think it definitely is cultural, and I'd say it's like Europe-wide. The same thing is in the UK. It's all about, real estate, real estate. And I honestly think the reason why in the US is a little bit different because their approach to, let's say, failing is very different. People can go bankrupt there numerous of times and no one is going to make a big deal about it, right? It's not a big deal. You go and you try, and if it fails, you go and try again. Whereas I think in Europe, and I guess that comes from in general back in the day, failure is seen as something really bad, right? If you you wouldn't be okay to tell your friends and people, like, if you go bankrupt, Jesus Christ, are people going to talk about it, right? It's not going to be like, oh, okay, now he's building something new. It's going to be like a black mark on you. So inherently, by having this fear of failing, we tend to lean towards something that feels less risky. And obviously owning a house always will feel less risky because you see it, you touch it, it's there. It's like, okay, I have it. Like here, I can touch it. I have it. No matter what happens, I have it. Also, I guess for a lot of countries that have gone through many crises, that didn't help. Like in Lithuania, it's the same thing. But from the collapse of the Soviet Union, we went through numerous banking crises where people did lose a lot of money, right? Like they lost their deposits, they lost their investments. So the trust has been completely broken. It's very hard to rebuild that. It's very hard to trust again if you've lost a lot. And so where do you default? Land and houses. Like in Lithuania, land is a very big thing. Everybody has land. Everybody owns a piece of land because then it's yours. You can do something with it. So I think it's definitely cultural, but not only cultural. Do believe that in general within ourselves, we carry a lot of ancestral stuff, right, that has been building up, and therefore it comes out unconsciously in the way we behave and in the way we perceive things and what we lean more towards.
Right. So when you advise clients, let's say I have a value. For me, the environment needs to be protected. I am not one of those people who loves to see people shooting, into Mars. This is, my focus. So if I had to invest, I want to know what I'm investing in. Do you also help them with that? Like I have a strong, like I do want to make my money. I do want to pass some money to my kids. The future is uncertain. I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to finance with my money something that I don't believe in or that I'm against.
Yeah. So I have a slightly different view on that. Yes.
Okay.
The short answer is yes. You can choose ethical investments. You can choose all these kind of things. The reality, however, is a little bit the greenwashing in the fashion industry. When the H&Ms and the Zara's, the organic cotton or they recycle, it's, bull. Basically, it's a little bit the same. You can buy an ESG portfolio. You can buy an ethical portfolio. Let's be honest. It's not going to be this wonderful thing. Maybe it's ethical on certain things and not ethical on other things, right? It's very hard to do that. You can go into something that's called impact investing. But when you go like really deep and you really want to do serious impact investing, unfortunately, you cannot do that with 100 or 1,000. You need a couple 100,000 to be able to do these kind of investments. And so my bottom line is you have two choices. You can say, because this is not 100% ethical and I'm not so sure about where this is going, so I'm going to boycott by not investing, by having less and just sitting on the sidelines. Or you kind of go like, okay, how about I choose the best option that I have? Like, let's say you can remove certain companies, you can focus on some areas, but it's never going to be 100%. And you say, I'm still going to invest, I'm going to choose the best that I can in order to make more money, so that then I can have an impact. Then I use my money to have some kind of serious, measurable impact on environment, on community, on whatever it is that is important for you. But the bottom line is, it's really difficult as a small investor to really have that clean, super impactful, ethical way of investing. It was in the beginning to some extent. Now it's every fund is an ESG fund, like every fund is ethical fund, but the reality is it isn't, bottom line.
I see. So that means that it puts more pressure, I think, on people who have that money to invest consciously, right? Do you see that happening?
Definitely. Good. There is a movement from the young generation that are taking over the wealth, and that's where kind of having that generational wealth comes into play, because they have the wealth already, because they don't need to work on building wealth. They are born into wealth. They can have this ability to use the wealth accumulated by generations to do something different. And there definitely is a lot of these young people that consciously choose investments that are positively impactful, even if maybe they're not giving them a big return. They look more at making an impact than making a return, because they already have the wealth. So there's definitely that happening, but I'm kind of, a big part of what I do with my clients is realism as well. And, bringing them back down to what is actually possible. As a small investor, like, you're not going to have, ability to invest super impactfully, period.
I see. Why did you choose Milan?
My husband's work brought us there, and he's Italian, so that's the question.
How do you like it here
compared to London? Absolutely love it.
You do?
I think, I had my run in London. I had 21 years in London. I'm good. Now I just, go back there. My parents live there. A whole different life quality, for sure, with the lakes and the mountains, and, the city is small. I can walk everywhere. So
do you go back to Lithuania? Do you have, your parents live in London now, but do you have
yeah, there's my granddad there, so I go there once in a while.
How do you feel compared to how do you feel in relation to the country of your birth?
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. I don't know. I'm not Lithuanian, I'm not English, I'm not Italian. I'm me, and I like living everywhere. Kind of, I know it sounds like really tacky, but the citizen of the world.
No, it's completely fine. So you're fine with that. You don't have you're okay, because you're okay with yourself, I think.
Yeah.
You're fine with you. You touched on try to convince people who were hurt by investment to reinvest. How did you do that? Because I imagine there must be a real block there. If I invest money and I lost it, I might not want to go there anymore.
It's small steps, right? So it's like, okay, I'm not asking you to take all your savings and invest. What if you start with 50 euros? Why don't you do that for 6 months and see how you feel, what happens, where it goes? And generally the small steps is what helps, because over time you start seeing the benefits of it. And once you start seeing the benefits of it, you want to do more of it. So it's kind of very simple. It's a little bit like, if you used to be, I don't know, a bodybuilder and you had a massive injury, you're not going to go back into the gym, at full force right after, right? You're going to start slowly. You're going to maybe start with 1 kilo weights and heal the injury.
I always ask people if they have a quote, a mantra, something that is valuable or has been valuable in your life. Do you have?
I don't think it's a quote or anything, but what I always like to remind myself is that every failure is just another lesson. That failure actually doesn't exist. If you think you fail, you've actually learned something. In those moments when you fail, it's your moment to learn and to kind of look at it from that point of view, because we do have a lot of things that don't work, especially when you run your own business and you do these things. There's a ton of stuff that doesn't work. It's not because something was wrong or you're wrong, it's because you needed to learn a lesson in there somewhere. So always looking for a lesson when you think that you're failing at something.
Was it always your case? Did you always approach failures this way, or you learned it?
I learned it. Of course I didn't. When I was young and a teenager, of course I didn't. But over time, I learned that that's, to survive, that's what you have to do. Otherwise, you can't be an entrepreneur and you can't do this, and you can't invest either, because you will make bad investments. Period. It's just going to happen no matter what. It's impossible not to. So that's going to happen. And if you kind of accept that, and when it happens, you learn what you need to learn from it, then it's all good. You move on.
That's so true. You seem so strong. You're such a...
Oh, thank you.
Right? No, I love that. It's applicable, this concept of failure as something, a lesson to learn, is applicable also to changes. As you said, when you were saying sooner or later you will make a bad investment.
Of course.
And this is so true also for, when you make decisions, because, at some point,
of course you'll make a bad decision. Yeah. But it's kind of also, that's the fun of it, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be that fun life, right? If everything was just great and fantastic, because that's how we keep going, because we need to overcome things. We need to solve problems. Otherwise, what are you going to do?
Talking about money is always makes my palms sweat. And I love how it's part of your job, and it's just an instrument. And it seems to me that it's almost there's almost creativity in it, the solving of the problems, right? It's a different point of view. I never thought about that. So if you had an advice, just one first advice.
Start today, not tomorrow, not later. Take whatever, 20 euros, because these days you can do it, right? The apps are there. It's super easy. Pick whatever app you like and start. And it's very simple. Take 50 euros and put it into what's called an index. So a basket of a number of companies. Put 50 euros there and look for S&P 500 ETF. That's it. That's all you got to do. And then you're going to get the fire. Oh, I want to do more. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. But the hardest part is starting. The hardest part is taking that first action and doing the first thing. Like, you don't have to wait until you have millions. You can afford 50 euros, right? You can lose 50 euros. So there you go. That's like kind of an easy start. Just take small steps. The compound effect. You start with little, but you end up with a lot, because every year it grows, and every year you're not only earning on the money that you put in, but you're also earning on top of your earnings. And so it starts, right? It starts like slowly ticking up, and then at some point it just goes like this. Wow. That's why it's very important to get in the game ASAP and not wait.
Thank you. Thank you, Indre. I love this conversation. I loved. Thank you. Reset Stories is a podcast created by Dea Ex Machina, produced by Cristina Rambaldi, hosted by Marta Mondelli. Intro music by Fabio Antonelli. You can hear the audio episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us here, and if you like what we do, rate and review us. Help us grow. If you want to be in touch, please send us comments here and messages at our Instagram page at Reset Stories Podcast or email us at info@deaexmachina.it.